Hello, everyone. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I'm already not loving the way this is looking. Hold on, guys. Give me a second. I feel as though... Give me 1 second, guys, before we fully get started. I'm just checking my settings and stuff because I'm not loving what I'm seeing right now. Take that off. Yep, that helps a little bit. Let's see, let's take this down. I feel like I have too many things open and it's slowing my computer down, and that's not what I need right now. I need the computer to work fast. But hey, guys, there's 40 of you guys already in here, so make sure, like I said, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we are going to be talking all things Arsenal because this is our Arsenal news show. We're going to be talking about Tomiyasu. Arteta give us a nice update on Tommy, a little bit about Ben White as well, and Ramsdale potentially becoming a option for Newcastle. So yeah, let's see. I'm going to add that. I'm trying to get all the graphics and everything together. So let's start off with some channel news before we fully get into things, because you guys are always like, what's going on the channel? What are you doing now? What's going on? And so the Wolves post-match podcast with LeGrove from the Arsenal Opinion podcast is available for patrons now. Like I always tell you guys, you can try out Patreon before you actually buy it or actually fully invest in it. And so you can actually watch the show for free, and you can have a membership for 7 days free. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/SheKnowsArsenal. There's also a little snippet of it on the YouTube channel that I put out this morning. So after you guys are done watching this, you can actually go watch that. It's about 15 minutes of me and Pedro LeGrove kind of going through some of the things that happened in the Wolves match, so you guys can take a little gander at that. The first half rewatch for Wolves will be out tomorrow morning for patrons. So when I get back I'm going out to lunch with my cousin. When I get back, I'm going to be filming that and then putting that onto the Patreon tomorrow morning so that you guys can enjoy that before the Luton game. And then after Luton, we're going to do our player ratings immediately following that. And our goal for today's stream is 100 likes. So make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel and commenting and all that kind of stuff. And without further ado, let's get into the actual things that you guys want to talk about. Let's see who's all in here. Tamina says, Aaron Ramsdale to Newcastle, bye-bye. Baba says, boom. I'm not so sure about the Ramsdale deal. Not sure if we should let him go. Mafia Boss says, evening, Jess. Mafia Boss also says, hopefully he's fully fit for Aston Villa. Jason Johnson says, Jess, you look beautiful as always. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. C. Walder says, afternoon, morning. Dr. Hudan says, hello, guys. Do you think Arsenal need to spend in January to win the league? Dr. Hudan also says, De Gea is going to Newcastle, isn't he, though? And James Bond says, it's Arsenal, not Ars. Exactly. I'm like, we're not Ars. We're the Arsenal, okay? So first and foremost, I just want to send out a little happy birthday to one of my little faves in Leandro Trossard. It's his 29th birthday today. And I think some people actually forgot that Trossard is actually older than a lot of our other players. He is fully in his old man era. You know, it's weird because I'm older than Trossard and I don't feel old, but 29 in football years is kind of old, you know? So happy birthday, happy 29th birthday to Leandro Trossard, one of the best January signings we have ever had, possibly the best. Maybe Jose Antonio Reyes comes to mind as another really good one. But when we talk about January signings making an impact, he has made a really big impact on Arsenal. And so happy birthday to him. Now let's talk about Tomiyasu. There's been an update with Tomiyasu. Mikel Arteta spoke about it in his press conference, and he said that Arsenal will decide tomorrow if Tomiyasu can play against Luton. He is a strong boy, and hopefully he will be fine. We know that Tomiyasu had an injury or went down and seemingly had an injury against Wolves. And that kind of, I think, made people quite nervous because Tomiyasu has become such an important part of the team. And over the last couple of weeks, he's been really, really good. And we're going into the Christmas period that's like games every 3 days. It's going to be really a difficult, trying time for Arsenal, especially since we already have some injuries in the team already. And so the last thing you want is for a really important, versatile player to go down with anything right now. And so Tomiyasu going down against Wolves was like, oh, not again. We know that his story at Arsenal has been riddled with injuries. And so hearing that he could potentially play tomorrow is a good sign. It probably means that it was more precautionary than an actual injury. And it's good to see that our players are becoming a lot more savvy. And when they feel something, they just go down, so that they don't aggravate it any further. We need to start taking care of ourselves better. Don't play through the injury. That's not that. I mean, you want players to sometimes go through the injuries, you know what I mean? And like persevere, but like that's not the stage that we're in right now. We're not in a Champions League final or in the run in or anything like that. We are so early on in a very long season. And so our players need to know when to put their hand up and say, listen, I'm not 100%. I'm going to go down before I actually get the injury. And that seems like what Tomiyasu may have done, which is a good thing. So could be available for Luton. Not sure if we should actually start him. But when you look at the games that are coming up, we have like Brighton at home. We also have West Ham at home a little bit further down the line. But we have Aston Villa away and Liverpool away that are the games that really stand out to me as like, those are going to be Tomiyasu games. Those are going to be games where you'll probably want to sit Zinchenko down and put in somebody that's going to have a little bit more height and athleticism, defensive awareness, and things like that. So even if he doesn't play against Luton, he'll also maybe get an opportunity to sit out against PSV and hopefully be ready for those really important matches coming up. Jason Johnson says players in a good team always want to play. Yeah, there's I don't think it's a matter of like, you know, I don't think putting your hand up is any sort of in saying like, hey, I might have an injury or there's might be something happening in my, you know, like, oh, I feel like it might pull in a second or something like that. I don't think that's any indication of like lack of like competitiveness or anything like that. I actually think that that's a sign of intelligence. It's sometimes you want to fight, but sometimes you also need to just say, you know what, in order for me to fight another day, I need to, sit out for the rest of this game. So yeah, I'm sure that all of our players want to play. Arteta spoke about it, that players are not happy when they're not starting, which is great. We have a competitive environment at Arsenal, but we also want our players to be smart. And Saka is one of those that he's knows when he's on the edges of an injury, so he'll go down and stuff like that. And the rest of our players need to be smart. Ben White is somebody that Arteta has spoken about, doesn't necessarily put his hand up when he's, holding on to an injury or feeling a little bit of something. And so even like Ben White, you need to put your hand up sometimes too, because we cannot afford to lose such important players. Only as the day says, Aston Villa will beat City. One thing that I'm really interested to see when it comes to Aston Villa versus City is how Aston Villa set up against City, because they'll be playing us the very next week at home. And so it may give us a little window into how they might attack us. You know what I mean? Like, will they sit in deep? Will they try to play their way? All those types of things. Mancube says, hey Jess, players who dropped into the Europa League, Benacer, Leo, David Neres, Kochu, also RB Salzburg went down. Okay, yeah, we can talk about that on another day for sure. You guys, this is going to be like a tight show. It's going to be a tight show because I have to go like immediately after this. So I want to talk about like all that kind of stuff, but we definitely have more pressing things to talk about. And then maybe on another show, when we have a little bit more time, we can talk about players that have dropped into Europa League and January transfers and things like that for sure. Nico says, when's the last time Arteta told the truth about players' injury and return date? I don't really think like, I don't really worry about these ones so much, about the precautionary ones, because he kind of said the same thing about Ben White before one of our other games, that he would be available, and he was available on the bench, but he didn't start. So it's not really these ones. It's the longer term ones where he doesn't give a date and the ones where he's like, we're not sure, we have to see, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's some that you can tell where he's trying to play mind games. I don't think Tomiyasu is one where you're going to play mind games. I think when you're trying to pull the wool over the national team's eyes and, that kind of stuff, I don't think he needs to play mind games with Luton. You think Arteta's playing mind games with Rob Edwards? I don't think so. So I think there's certain ones where he wants to kind of keep that veil of uncertainty, like a Thomas Partey coming back or Jesus coming back. Tomiyasu, whether or not he's able to be in the squad against Luton, I think is something that I don't really think he's going to spend time trying to play mind games for that one. Let's see. You guys want to talk about the Ramsdale Newcastle situation? We'll definitely get into that in just a second. Moss Sport World says we have not won at Kenilworth Road just for 10 matches. We need to make sure we win at Luton. Thing is I've seen some lineups going around that are weekend lineups. We don't need to weaken our lineup against Luton away. There's PSV away that is inconsequential to anything that's going to happen in the Champions League. We've already won the group. And so that's the opportunity that we have, that for 90 minutes, we can give some players some minutes and also rest others. Going away from home to Luton is not the game to start rotating and playing weekend sides. That is a surefire way to drop points. Going away from home in the Premier League is just not a guaranteed 3 points. Liverpool struggled against Luton away. So, and I'm not saying that like that guarantees that we're going to struggle, but what it does guarantee is that Arsenal need to be as strong as they could possibly be and play a good, solid lineup. You could switch out one or two players. Like, I'm not saying that, you couldn't play like a Kiwior or something at left back, and rest Tomiyasu, and also rest Zinchenko. That's something that you could do. I'm not saying that you couldn't play Jorginho and Rice and Odegaard, but some of the lineups that I see going around are just completely disrespectful towards the Premier League, the standard of the Premier League, and also are like, yeah, I'm glad you're not managing the team because we would lose, So a strong lineup needs to go out there because we have a game where we know we can rotate, but we cannot drop any points in the Premier League right now. We have Aston Villa away coming up, which is going to be a very difficult fixture. You have going to Anfield away. Those are the ones where if you build up the points now, if you drop points there, it doesn't hurt you as much. But think about how devastating it would be to drop points against Luton and then know that you have to almost like go to Anfield and win, So we have to build up those points. There's no reason to rotate in this game unless like you have an injury or you want to, give Kiwior some minutes or, something like that. But nothing like heavy, nothing heavy, Chadwick says, depending on which players, you think of, if goalkeepers get tired, they make errors. If strikers get tired, they get injured. SMD. When defenders get tired, they get yellows and red cards. Jacob says, go strong against Luton. Jacob says, also PSV is the game to rotate. Exactly. Jason Johnson says, who would you play, Jess, for Luton? Yeah, Arteta also spoke about, Ben White. He said that Ben White is feeling great. And so he's probably ready to go. He also, obviously, he came in for Tomiyasu twice. He came in for Tomiyasu against Lens and also against Wolves. So I would probably go with I would go with Raya, White, Gabriel, Saliba, Zinchenko. See, like if Tomiyasu was fully fit and I didn't feel like you needed to be safe with him, I would probably go, it's a tough one. Maybe Kiwior actually. Let me start over. Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Kiwior, Rice, Odegaard, Kai, Martinelli, Jesus, Saka. That's what I'd go with. I would start Havertz. They're a taller team. That's what I've read about Luton Town. So away from home, win your battles, get a little scruffy. If you need to get a set piece goal, Havertz would be nice to have. Be as strong, tall, and physical as you could possibly be. Chadwick says, no, I wouldn't disturb the defense, not for Premier League anyway, unless Tomiyasu is injured. I wouldn't even play Tomiyasu in this game, knowing the games that we have coming up. I would just play White and give Kiwior, that opportunity. I think just changing Kivior doesn't really disrupt you that badly. And again, if something were to happen to Tomiyasu, you do need somebody else that you can look at and say, you know what, you could probably play that more defensive role that Tomiyasu is playing. If Tomiyasu were to go down with an injury, we are in a difficult situation when it's like, okay, yeah, you go with Zinchenko, but you also need somebody that can come in that 60th minute. So I would probably just go ahead and play Kivior back there, and also give Zinchenko a little bit of a rest too, because we know that he's been playing a lot of minutes, and he's not necessarily a 3 games a week type of guy either. Aha says just Zinchenko or Kivior to start tomorrow. Kivior, like I said, says Zinchenko be benched for making multiple errors on Saturdays despite actually playing pretty well, bar this. Maybe bring Kivior to close the game out. Either way, like start Kivior and maybe bring Zinchenko on later if the game's already won, or start Zinchenko and then bring Kivior in later. Either one I'm kind of okay with, but ultimately, like, go strong. Jacob says Luton, a big team. We need our height in the midfield. Exactly, I agree with that. Jabanga says we should not take Luton for granted. However, this is the opportunity to improve our goal difference by scoring a lot of goals against Luton. Let's see. I want to take a little look at Luton Town and see if they're giving away a lot of goals at home. Because I also think we have this like, okay, we're going to score 4 or 5 goals. I'm not quite sure. They won their game this weekend. 2-1. They drew to Liverpool 1-1 at home. They lost to Tottenham 1-0 at home. They lost to Burnley 2-1 at home. They drew to Wolves 1-1 at home. They lost to West Ham 2-1 at home. Let's see. I'm trying to see if they've gotten slapped up. I'm not seeing, you guys, they haven't gotten slapped up at home. So I'm not saying that it can't happen. But what I am saying is that, like, the idea that we're going to increase our goal difference in this game, I think Luton at home, Burnley at home, Sheffield at home, that's where you're going to get those numbers up. But like, I'm looking at their fixtures. They've played against some better teams, and it's 1-1, 2-1 type of score lines. Not a lot of zeros either. They tend to get a goal. So I want to just keep that in mind for sure. Samuel says that tells you a lot about the defense. Jason says Jess is fantastic on the Forever podcast. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all of your guys' support since I've been on the Forever Arsenal podcast. It's been super fun. Nico says, Jess, you should try to become a permanent Arsenal Forever podcast. Well, they have 4 people. I mean, you can't be forever if you already have 4 people, but I'll definitely step in if they need me. Kind of like I'm like their little Trossard, I guess. Cal says, I totally agree with your selection. We should keep Tommy for Liverpool, first improving fitness by coming on against Villa in the second half. And Chola says, the only thing I would change in that starting 11 is bringing in Liquor. I know what you mean. Kivior in place of Zinni. I love that. So that's kind of the Tomiyasu update. Like I said, Ben White is also, ready to go. So I'm pretty sure he'll start in this game. And it's a good thing too, because Ben White is so funny, because every single time that like somebody goes to the bench, it's almost like, oh, that the guy that's playing is so much better than the guy that he replaced. I don't actually think there's a huge gulf between Ben White and Tomiyasu right now. I just think Tomiyasu is kind of like the flavor of the month. So I'm excited to see a little bit of Ben White as well, because he's also a really important player for us. So let's hop into the other stuff about Ramsdale to Newcastle. So if you guys did not watch the game against Manchester United versus Newcastle that ended in a 1-0 win for Newcastle, Nick Pope actually went off in that game with a injury to his shoulder, and he'll be out for like 5 to 6 months. So, which is also good. It's good news for Ramsdale, because that he probably won't be ready to go for the Euro. So that actually makes it a lot easier for him to make the team if Southgate were, thinking about bringing somebody else in that's actually starting. But, beyond that, Newcastle are looking for a goalkeeper. And so Ben Jacobs did speak about Ramsdale and Arsenal's situation. I did find this to be quite interesting. Um, so this is the first thing that he said. He said Nick Pope will undergo surgery, dislocated shoulder, but worth pointing out that Eddie Howe has a lot of faith in Martin Dubravka. Howe, however, wanted Dubravka to leave on a brief loan spell at Man United, and Newcastle are now assessing whether to get a number one cover in January. So they are going to be looking for a goalkeeper, which makes a lot of sense because your number two for a long period of time tends to be a little tricky. It tends to be quite tricky. So he also said that, Arsenal's intent is to retain Aaron Ramsdale until at least the summer. Tensions rise with Mikel Arteta's decision to bring David Raya on loan. The goalkeeping saga at the Emirates continues. He also kind of spoke about how Arsenal don't see that big of a difference between the two goalkeepers and stuff like that. My feelings on this are kind of more based on keeping the circus alive for me is not the right thing to do. I just feel as long as Aaron is the number two and Raya is the number one, there will always be this ever constant conversation about did Arteta make a big wrong decision and all this kind of stuff, when I think it's starting to settle down a little bit. I guess if you want to play devil's advocate, if there's ever going to be something that's going to catch us out when we're trying to win something, it's going to be the one position that we haven't addressed properly. And so if we do get into the run in, it's almost like guaranteed something will happen to Raya. And if we have not replaced with a decent number two, we will be in trouble. So, maybe it is worth keeping Ramsdale just for the sake of that. But I'm still leaning more towards 70%. Try to sell him to Wolves or Newcastle or Chelsea in January and reinvest that money into a position that we really need. I would almost be a little bit more wanting to take our chances there than take our chances with our midfielder not getting another center back, right? And so, I think the likelihood of Raya getting injured is less than one of our center backs getting injured or one of our midfielders getting injured. So if the only way that we can bring in somebody in January is to sell Ramsdale, I'm 70% there, especially because it just calms down all the noise. And if you can get somebody like a Matty Ryan in, then you'll probably be fine. But again, I understand the aspect of things if there's one thing that's going to take us down, it's going to be the position that we have not replaced properly. So maybe the club does see the Ramsdale and Raya situation as something that makes sure that nothing happens to us in a goalkeeping capacity, but it limits our ability to bring somebody in January if we can't make a big sale. I do find it unlikely that we'll get a sale for Emile Smith-Rowe because he hasn't played enough. I find it unlikely that Nketiah will go in January. So where's that money going to come from? I don't know. I don't know where that money's going to come from. But Newcastle are looking at Ramsdale. They like Ramsdale, obviously, because Eddie Howe really likes Ramsdale and had him as his goalkeeper at Bournemouth. But Arsenal's current position on Ramsdale is that they want to keep him until the summer. And so Newcastle will probably end up bringing in somebody like David De Gea, who has been sitting around for many, many months doing nothing because, I guess he hasn't found the right move or whatever. And so this was always probably going to be the case that he would end up back in the Premier League somewhere at another top side. And so it'll be interesting to see. And I think David De Gea does kind of fit Newcastle in a way too, because they don't necessarily play with their goalkeeper out from the back. Like Nick Pope does kind of kick it long a lot. They don't really it's not a heavy emphasis like it is at Arsenal or Manchester City or Liverpool. So I can definitely see this happening. But yeah, right now it does look like Ramsdale is going to stay. And which is, it's not like bad news or anything like that. I just think it depends on what side you sit on. Do you think that the circus needs to end and that, making 35-40 million on our goalkeeper will be good to reinvest into a better position? Or do you kind of stand on the side of, listen, I want to have two good goalkeepers just in case something happens to Raya? It just depends on how you think about it. Gabenga says we may need Ramsdale later on in the year. Just look at the top goalkeepers that are injured now, Allison, Pope, etc. I kind of mentioned that on the post match with LeGrove, that I did kind of feel like it was weird that Allison and Nick Pope and Jose Sa all got injured at like the same time. Maybe there is a little bit of more likelihood that goalkeepers are getting injured more frequently, and Arsenal need to take that into consideration. Jack Stone says 60 million for Ramsdale. O'Malley says Newcastle will sign De Gea. Chadwick says absolutely nothing wrong with having two top goalkeepers. Nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think that also is like a little bit, it's removing the context around, we have two good number one goalkeepers, but the one that we have that's the number two right now is a jolted number one that doesn't quite, he's played pretty, I don't want to say he's played poorly in every time that he's played since he's been dropped, but he hasn't looked great. So it's almost like, is he really going to be good for us if he's a head case? That's it. Jason says, hope people are hitting the like button. Make sure you guys are liking the video. Aha says, Jess, question, if it will be a loan with an obligation to buy from Ramsdale, can the incoming money we get in the summer be used to allow us to buy in Jan if we can't do the sale in Jan? Yeah, I think that you can use funds that are going to come in at an earlier date, knowing that obligation is coming in. And so like when they were saying Wolves want to do a loan with an obligation to buy, I was like chomping at the bit, because even if it is 35 million or something like that, you can use that money. But also you have to remember that 30 million is going out to Brentford. You have 30 million already going out to Brentford that we know we're going to pay. So it almost like evens itself out anyway. So you still need to probably sell one more player, but it's getting toward, like, you can kind of start moving towards the direction of, okay, maybe sell one more player and then we can bring somebody in, A cow says Ramsdale helped us get to the CL and we turned his back on him. Sad. I mean, he helped us, yeah, but it's a brutal and ruthless game. I think Arsenal wanted to upgrade upon their goalkeeper, and I don't think you can ever begrudge the club for wanting to upgrade in positions. Now, I don't think anybody would have an issue if they were upgrading on positions that they wanted upgraded. Like, if we bought a striker, no one would feel bad for Gabriel Jesus, would they? They would say, oh, it's we needed a striker, right? Because, Gabriel Jesus doesn't do this. We would be able to rattle off all the things that Gabriel Jesus doesn't do. But I think it's who they've replaced, not necessarily that they've upgraded in positions. I do think that if we had brought in a striker, no one would bat an eyelid. They would not feel bad for Gabriel Jesus. It's about who, not the fact that we are doing it, right? What the head says, Arsenal should sign back a Wobie, the player, this physical strength, coverage, and area and technical ability and pace. Hell no. You guys, let's be all the way for real. We are so beyond Iwobi at this time. He is exactly where he needs to be. Good player, but not good enough for Arsenal. Chadwick says, Jess, here's an idea. Arsenal could use Raya for the first half of the season and then play Ramsdale for the second half of the season, but in a phased approach. But why? Why would we do that? Like, what would be the benefit of phasing Ramsdale into the second half of the season when the pressure was going to be more heightened? Personally, I wouldn't want to play Ramsdale in a situation where we're potentially in the latter stages of the Champions League, or we're potentially in a run-in. I've already seen what Aaron Ramsdale is like in the run-in. He's not good under pressure, and he makes more mistakes. And he's even said it himself. He really struggled towards the back end of last season because he just thought we would continue to win. So I don't know if I would want to phase in Aaron Ramsdale into the most difficult part of our season after not playing that much at the beginning and seeing how he played against Brentford. I'm just not sure that that's really what you want. I think what you want is for you maybe want to have him around just in case, but you want to maybe hope for a scenario where you don't have to use him very often. That's, he'll get an opportunity against Liverpool. Let's see what he looks like against them in the FA Cup, maybe. But I'm not really understanding why we would want Ramsdale to play in some of the most important games that we have. Crispy says, as much as I want to keep Ramsdale, he won't stay to be the second fiddle. It's more amicable to move him on and wish him the best. Ashitosh says, Arsenal need to sell Ramsdale for at least 60 million. Chadwick says, yeah, Jess, but it could also be a situation of getting help for Ramsdale, not necessarily an upgrade. Fair enough. Jacob says, man said Iwobi. You guys, I'm not doing the Iwobi thing. I can't do it. He's a decent player, but I just don't see why we would do that. I mean, our midfield options right now, we may not be happy with them, but I think we have to dream bigger than Iwobi. I think we have to want to upgrade and not just add bodies for the sake of it. And I actually think we're beyond the point of buying squad players too. I think the starters should become squad players or rotational options, and we should continue to upgrade. I think that's the best way to build a squad. When you start buying players to fill squad roles, I do think you start to see the repercussions of that. It doesn't look good, Mancube says, find a lone goalkeeper and use Rams fee for Diamande. I'm kind of on that same tip. Jason Johnson says that would work, playing one half and the other plays the other. You have to have a solid back line. Adebayi says, why is the obsession for Raya Ramsdale issue? Raya is obviously the better keeper. I understand the sentiment of using an English keeper. Let's see. Blaze says, nobody betrayed Ramsdale. Some Arsenal fans are so dramatic. We need to accept that Arteta already made the decision. I think it's more about who. Like, I just don't think that if we had went out in the summer and bought Osimhen and Jesus was sitting on the bench, no one would care. No one. It wouldn't care. It's who they replaced, that's all it really is. Like, it just depends on who it is. Ramsdale is a very beloved character. Everybody loves him, blah, blah, blah. So, they just, and some people figured that, goal scoring was our issue at the end of last season. I don't necessarily feel like that was. I think we were nervous, erratic. We lacked the ability to calm the game down. A lot of chaos in there. We didn't have the ability to just kind of like quiet the noise, and we were giving up too many goals. And I think the signings that we made were to, kind of combat the chaos. And so I don't really begrudge the club for doing that, and there will come a time where somebody that I really like will be the player that they're replacing, and it'll suck. It really will. But I can never be mad at the club for wanting to get just 5% better, 2% better, 1% better, because when you're playing up against the Manchester Cities of the world, that's the difference between winning the league and not. Lucas says somebody needs to play Brentford at home. It's just one game, but it's important 3 points. Boy says, I think people would be okay with replacing Ramsdale with Donnarumma. Donnarumma is he's not playing very good right now. And like, if you want a goalkeeper that plays out from the back, then you do not want Donnarumma, because he cannot do it. He's having a strange season. Aha says, Jess, back to the loan with the obligation thing. The Raya one is technically not an obligation to buy. It's an option, isn't it? Even though we've already agreed to it, right? It is an option, but we already know we're going to pay it, so it's damn near an obligation. If that makes sense. Set says trading Kedia and ESR for Ivan Toney. People still want Ivan Toney. I don't know what's going on with that. It's kind of like, it looked like it was going to happen, then it's not going to happen. Like, what's going on with that? Who even knows, Willsey says, Jess, why aren't you on the top 6 show anymore? I have to choose between the two right now. I was on it, like last week, but not this week. I was on it on Friday, so I may be on it again this coming Friday too. But yeah, I had to do the show at this time because I'm going out to lunch with my favorite cousin, and so I needed to do this a little bit earlier. I knew it would conflict with the top 6 show, but you could either watch me now and watch them on playback or watch them now and then watch me on playback. Either one works, I think. Sometimes our schedules just don't mesh. They just don't mesh. So yeah, you guys, I think with the Ramsdale situation, I do kind of think that this might end up being the case, that we won't bring in anybody. Or we won't move Ramsdale on. We'll keep him. And, maybe Arsenal just decide not to do anything in January. I feel like that is so risky, with the FFP that we have. Like, we're so close to the line that we would have to move somebody on. So if you take Ramsdale off the table, we know ESR won't really have played that many minutes, so he's not going to command a decent fee. Who are you going to move on in order to get this money to bring somebody in? I don't know. I was kind of counting on it being Ramsdale, but if they decide to keep him, then they decide to keep him. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Chadwick says, no, Jess, the main reason Arsenal lost last season was because of our poor officiating. Whether you want to say it or not, it was deliberate or not. Arsenal were robbed between 6 and 9 points last season. Boy says, I don't think we are bringing anyone in. And that would kind of align with most January windows. I think the idea that every single window we're going to bring somebody in is a little bit based on, I think like we'll see other teams do it and we'll be like, well, why aren't we buying anybody? But we spent 200 million, this past summer. We're so unlucky that Timber's injury happened the way that it did. But I think if Timber was there and maybe Havertz had clicked a little bit sooner, we'd be less desperate to bring somebody in. But, we'll see what Arsenal do. If it's anything, it's going to be a defender because of Timber's injury. And obviously, like, there's some players on the edges of injuries. So, but I just don't know where the money is going to come from. Boy says we might loan out Noweri or something. That would be interesting. Gabanga says, what is your score prediction for Arsenal versus Luton? 2-0 Arsenal. I think we're pretty good at keeping clean sheets away from home. I think we'll get 2 goals. But it'll be kind of like one of those closer ones where it won't be pretty. Like, it's not going to be like what we saw against Wolves. We know it's going to be kind of like a battle out there. D'Angelo says, yeah, Ramsdale struggled bad last season. I always said it. And that's not to say that other players didn't struggle. I just think, that some of the things that Ramsdale struggled with are not things that are ever going to change. And I think that's just the key. You can expect Saka to do better on penalties. He missed the penalty against West Ham. We know that that's not a reason to like upgrade upon Saka. Like, Saka will get better at the penalties, right? There are just things there that we're not going to change with the players that were there. And so if Ramsdale is the kind that doesn't really want to sit up in the center back position and dictate play from there and really invite pressure onto him and play out from the back, if, he's not going to claim crosses and things like that, if those things are not going to change, then you have to upgrade if that's the way that you want to play. And, it's not that Ramsdale's not a good goalkeeper. He's a very good goalkeeper. When he inevitably leaves Arsenal, he will play for a good side. It's just right now, he doesn't really fit in the way that Arteta wants to play. And I think that that's key, Jason Johnson says, can't wait for Timber to get back into this team. Annette says, Arteta wanted Raya before he got Ramsdale. Exactly. Ivy says, I thought we have the CL money for January window. We do. We do have that. I don't know. I think several people have said that Arsenal might need to make a sale. So I'm not quite sure if they're counting on that money or not. So let's see what happens. Marco says, next season with Timber back, I'd advocate playing 2 strikers with Jesus as a support striker, advanced left center mid, and Osimhen elite number 9 up top. Thoughts? It's definitely an option. I wouldn't mind seeing two strikers in some circumstances. Not every single one, but in some would be cool. For real. Jason says, Jess, are you doing a watch along for Luton? No, for games like this, I don't usually do the watch alongs. It's usually for top 6 clashes and the Champions League games and cup games. So sometimes I just need to be able to sit down and watch the game, you guys. Like, they stress me out so much that I'm like, okay, top 6 clashes, we'll do it. So yeah, the next time we'll do a watch along will probably be PSV away, and then Liverpool away will be the next watch alongs that I do. C. Walder says, I'm convinced that Arteta's ideal goalkeeper situation was Raya number 1 and Rambo number 2. But when Raya was unavailable, he probably thought, I'll get my number 2 in now and fight with Leno, and Rambo exceeded expectations. D'Angelo says he was real sloppy. Yeah, Saka, Shake, that penalty, that match was a massive one. That whole West Ham game, I still feel some type of way about it. Somebody posted the clip of Declan Rice against Wolves, like jumping in front of one of their players and intercepting the ball. And people were like, that's exactly what he did to us during the run-in in our 2-2 draw against West Ham. That led to their first goal. And it just like brought all the memories back. Just brought all the memories back. I'm just like, oh, I love Declan Rice, but did he really have to do that to us? Did he really have to do that to us? Chola says, to be honest, I get goosebumps when Ramsdale is in goal. Ever since Raya comes in, I don't know whether it's because Raya is always calm and poised, which is calming. Nevertheless, I wish him the best. I don't think Ramsdale gives you a sense of calm. Like he says himself, like he's energetic. He needs to be involved. So in order to calm things down, especially when we get into the run-in, you're going to need calm heads. You need people that are going to just like do the job and not have to be like back against the wall all the time. You know what I mean? And so I think having Raya at the end of the season is going to pay dividends because you can't really see it now. But I do think he brings a measure of calm to the back line that Ramsdale didn't necessarily do. We were so good last season that even when he was making the mistakes at the beginning of the season, we didn't really notice it, but it started to become very, very obvious towards the end. So we'll see how things go. Seawater says, but not quite enough to remove Raya from Arteta's thoughts. No, they were always going to go back. And that's the thing. It's like Arteta never really lets go of like his initial people that he wants. So sometimes I think back on some of the players that he wanted before, and I'm like, will we ever go back for so-and-so or so-and-so? Because it seems like Arteta goes back to the guys that he's always wanted, right? Wilsey says the UCL money won't be enough for Tony. That's why we need to sell someone also. 11 says, I think we're 3 players away from going to that next level. We need another winger, a partner for Rice, and a striker for sure. Kippy says, do you support Kaiser Chiefs, Jess? No, I don't support Kaiser Chiefs. I got this in like a PR package. And so I don't support them, but I love, like, I got a couple of pieces and I love them, so hopefully I didn't like disappoint anybody. I don't actually like support the team, but I love the jacket and I got a couple other things too. Dale Carragher says, rank the current ex-Arsenal keepers, Raya, Ramsdale, Leno, Martinez for a team. Not known for goalkeepers, eventual PL starters. I don't know. I think like Raya, Martinez, Ramsdale, Leno, something like that. I think Raya is really, really good. And I think we'll start to really see it too. The only reason why I don't rate Martinez as much is because he does really good for Argentina, but he tends to be average for Aston Villa. So I'm not sure. I think a lot of players look really good for Argentina and then they look like normal with their club teams. So yeah. Ivy says Declan Rice leap. Errol Graham says evening. Jess, remember Wright and Bright for Crystal Palace. It could be Evan and evening. Jess, remember Wright and Bright for Crystal Palace. Right, Bright. It could be. Oh yeah, I get you. Let's see. Seawater says, so who replaces Rambo as number 2? I don't know. That's up to Edu to figure out, but I guess it does have to be somebody who can play out from the back, but I don't necessarily feel like it needs to be another number 1. Like, I do think that the number 2 goalkeeper situation is becoming a lot more convoluted than it needs to be. You have a number 1 and you have a number 2, and it just is fine, Asher Dooley says Rams is our least calm player by a country mile. Jason says if Ramsdale wants to go, then let him go. D'Angelo says Nelson should not be sold. He had his chance and he's still loyal, sell other mid players. Like Reece Nelson is nowhere near the top of my list of players that should go. 1, because he's not going to fetch a decent fee anyway. And 2, because he's not taking up, I know every time I do that, it's like a little bubble comes up. But he just doesn't hurt us in any sort of way. I don't think he doesn't really take up any sort of like space. He's a third, fourth choice winger. And sometimes you need people to fill those squad roles, and the best players to do that are players from your academy. So Reece Nelson is not somebody that's anywhere near the top of my list of players that like have to go. You know what I mean? I wish he'd actually get a little bit more playing time, to be honest. Wilsey says Tierney. Yes, Tierney. Tierney's definitely going to go, but they've already said he doesn't really want to stay at Sociedad, which makes sense. Why would he want to stay at Sociedad? Like, it's a good place to be because you can play Champions League and stuff like that, but surprise, surprise, he wants to be closer to home. So we'll probably end up selling him to Celtic for peanuts. you know. So yeah. Let's see. D'Angelo says, what's the name of the left back? Yeah, it's Tierney. Gakao says, get rid of selfish and poor finisher and Kedia and bring on a new striker and share position with Jesus. The striker's coming, you guys. The striker's coming. I'm not too worried about it now. But next summer, like the summer coming up, we're going to get a striker. And I'm excited for whoever that's going to be. Errol says, and just have watched Boat on BBC. It's brilliant. Oh, yeah, you told me that. I have to put it on my list. Actually, I'll write it down now. I need some new shows to watch before House of Dragons and The Ones Who Live come back. Lucas says, yeah, we'll get like 15 million for Tierney. If we're lucky, if you're selling to Celtic, you're definitely not going to get a lot. So yeah, it's going to be one of those where we pretty much sell them for peanuts. Namdi says, whatever happens, don't sell Ramsdale to our competition. Nothing wrong in having two good goalkeepers. And Kedia, Nelson, ESR can be sold to generate funds for a striker. We also need a DM. Listen, I wish it was that easy, but Nelson and ESR aren't going to command anything. I think what you need to do with ESR, we spoke about this yesterday, is you need to give him a run. He needs like 10, 15 games, I think, in order for people to really see what he can do, because he's so injury prone. He's always injured. So I don't think in the January window you're going to get any more than like 20 million for ESR if you're lucky. And really, for a player like him, you should be getting closer to like 40. Nelson, not going to command a decent fee, doesn't play enough, So then you have Nketiah, who probably would get a decent fee, but, I think we know the players that would get the most, and Ramsdale is probably one of them. But I hear what you're saying. Ronnie says, Jesus can play the role of Alvarez. Anton Dunn says, are we the worst club at selling players? Explain 5 marks. I mean, we're not very good at selling, so it's definitely something that's an area for improvement, I think. Boy says ESR should fetch good money on the market as long as he's actually put in the shop window before being sold. There should be times that Martinelli and Saka will be rested. He plays then surely. When Arteta said ESR's best position isn't on the wing, I just know he's not going to play him there ever. And I know that we don't necessarily play with a creative wing outlet type of player. Like, that's not what we play with, but ESR could be really useful there in 30 minutes left in the game, 20 minutes left in the game to step in for Saka and Martinelli. Even on the right-hand side, he can do a good job. Like, I just feel like we need to figure out a way to make him look like an attractive option. I think right now he looks a little bit like a good option that for like 2 seasons ago. But if Cole Palmer can get 45 million and Gordon could get 45 million, then we should be kind of trying to figure out a way to make him look like a 45 million pound player. The only way he's going to look like that is if you give him playing time. He was getting playing time, so it's not like Arteta was not giving it to him, but ESR has to do his side of it too and, maintain his fitness. Only as the day says, I want Arteta to sign Alvarez from City. Yeah. I mean, that would be great. Adebayo says, without a better striker in Jan, Arsenal won't win the league this season. Arsenal is 7th in terms of goal scoring. Selling Kedia, Jesus could be deployed at left mid and bench Havertz. To be honest, I don't really think it's about goal scoring. I think it's more about the amount of chances that we were creating. Our open play chance creation was abysmal until we played against Lens and Wolves. And a lot of that had to do with Odegaard not being in good form and not really having a good balance in midfield. So if we create enough chances, Saka, Martinelli, and Jesus will score enough. We know we'll get quite a few goals from Martin Odegaard will get some from Kai Havertz. So I don't necessarily feel like our problem is goal scoring. Our problem was creating enough chances. Saka was getting one chance a game. Martinelli would maybe get a half chance. We just weren't creating chances, So as long as we're creating chances, we'll score goals. We'll still 100% miss some because our players are not as clinical. But I'm not really, buying this idea that we don't have goals in our team. We definitely have goals in our team. Chadwick says, no, sell Jesus and keep Nketiah. Jesus hasn't proven that he's better than Eddie. I don't know. I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, I feel like Gabriel Jesus is clear of Eddie 10 times over. IP says we are starting to create chances again. It's a good sign. The forwards, though, need to be less selfish. So yeah, you guys, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here though, because like I said, I got things to do, but I just wanted to pop on for probably about an hour and chit chat with you guys about Tomiyasu and Ramsdale. Like I said, tomorrow for patrons, the first half rewatch will come out, and then we'll do player ratings immediately following the Luton game. Or hopefully we're talking about a win. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.